The Pale King died to the infection, the disease, the plague of the Radiance, the light forgotten. Not that he didn't have a plan, though it was morbid. That plan was to create a vessel out of the corpses of his lineage, to have them born in the abyss where they could become an amalgam of root, worm, and void. And why? There were so many other ways to create something without a mind to think, a will to break, or a voice to cry suffering. The first candidate is just a good old rock. I mean, this rock doesn't have a voice to cry suffering, it doesn't have a mind to think, it doesn't have a will to break. It's just a rock. So why didn't he seal her in a rock? Well, that is probably because she possesses dreams. So a rock doesn't have any dreams to possess. Therefore, she couldn't possess a rock. And he needed something she could possess. See the problem? Alright. Well then, why not a shadow creeper? These little guys have nothing for their dream dialogue. Literally, dot, dot, dot. As close to thinking about nothing as you can get. And yet it's still dream dialogue, so it isn't like it doesn't have a mind. So, would this work? Even its entry says it's never found to eat or drink anything. If you can get any closer to not having a mind to think, having no will to break, and having no voice to cry suffering, then I don't know what does. Even the vessels are more expressive. It literally walks back and forth endlessly. However, clearly, a giant pit of the corpses of your lineage was required, dear Pale King. So, is that due to void? Maybe you needed void for this operation. The Shadow Creepers certainly are close to the void, but I don't think they're made of it. Well, the Pale King didn't need to sacrifice his firstborn, his secondborn, probably his thousandth born to the void, because he was making void constructs. Like, a lot of them. The palace is filled with void constructs. Wings molds and king's molds. And that clearly shows he didn't need to do all those sacrifices if he was merely looking for a void-filled entity. However, arguably, he imprinted them with a purpose. And it could be argued the imprinting process created impurities. However, that seems more like a fault with the creation process that's a lot easier to fix. And you'd assume the baby death pit plan was a last resort, not plan B. So he probably tried, and I think he would have succeeded, but he thought that wasn't enough, that no matter his void construct, whatever he made would simply be too weak to contain her. Why do I say too weak? Well, if we go all the way down to the entry for pure vessel, chosen vessel, raised and trained to prime form. Why would he need to train the pure vessel if strength wasn't a factor here? And that explains a lot of this. He needed something with pale lineage because the pale lineage was the strongest lineage he knew of. And this being literally had to have the strongest mind possible. And an obsession at that time in soulcasting was a pure focus. Pure vessel. A focus purely dedicated to containment. A focus that was strong enough to contain the Radiance. Wrap that up in like a dozen seals as a backup plan in case it fails, and you can understand what he was going for. Now, clearly it didn't work, but it did work for a time. It just didn't work perpetually, because problems in Hollow Knight aren't solved permanently. Thank you for listening.